Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Today is a special treat as we start a segment of Rogue Ways that will focus on the lives of interesting people of various backgrounds, looking more deeply at the threads that weave a series of moments together on a line to create a human life of intricate, harmonious, and sometimes imperfect measure. The first person to bravely allow me to scrutinize them is someone who we only just heard from a few episodes ago on Rogue Ways, episode 1.2, on the topic of dreaming and the non-locality of consciousness. In that episode, we briefly became acquainted with Alan. Alan, how do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, Cisco.
Cisco. I have been meaning to ask forever. Alan Cisco. Alan started with a rough life of abuse and trauma, lived out the party life of sin and indulgence in the temptations of the flesh, acquired a taste for Buddhism and self-discipline, achieved high ranks in many martial arts, I'm told, and became a Buddhist priest, and has, is it a master's degree in psychology?
Yes, yeah.
Wow. Also, this is not even the end of the list. He also counsels the living and the dying in hospice and spiritual work, has had 5 near-death experiences, and is a philosopher, a hermit, and sequesters himself in his home with his 2 cats, where he tutors inductees to the path. So I am impressed just by reading that, and I can't wait to talk about all of those things. So Alan, thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
And I have a pointless question of the episode just because it's tradition now at this point. And so my pointless question for you, especially given all of your accomplishments, to what level do you adhere to the philosophy of fake it till you make it?
Well, since a large part of my personal training and discipline is in martial arts, such a mindset gets you punched in the mouth. So bragging about ability, accomplishments, and skills is fine over the keyboard. But when you step into the ring, like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. And then you see where the cards fall with your so-called ability. So I almost never fake it. I make sure that I have the ingredients to bake it.
Yeah, I like it. I'm on like this spectrum of things where I always constantly doubt myself. You've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Yep.
I don't want to say that I'm intelligent, but I have to for this to work for me. So with the Dunning-Kruger effect, intelligent people often doubt themselves and feel like they're not good enough or not capable or whatever. So I have this like imposter syndrome always going on. So even though I feel like in reality, I'm not faking it till I make it, I have to fake it for myself to get over my imposter syndrome with the Dunning-Kruger effect and actually go like get shit done.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
it's
I mean,
weird, like complicated psychological trick I play on myself.
Yeah, well, it's a funny dichotomy to where you want to be good at something and say, hey, you know, I know how to do heart surgery. I'm good at it. No one's died on my table. But you want to make sure you never step into the realm of, I can create life, you know, go overboard into the point of hubris, and then you just fall no matter what. So
hubris is my favorite word, I think, just for how perfect it is in describing like the downfall of most people.
Oh yeah, for certainly, especially people of earthly power, at least. And well, really spiritual power nonetheless. It just I used to love the quote about power corrupts and absolute power absolutely corrupts. But I really like Frank Herbert's interpretation, who wrote the Dune series, where he said, it's not that power corrupts, it's corruptible people seek out power, and then it just, you know, fulfills itself. So there's really a flaw in the character of people who want control and power just to start with.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. I have never met a person yet or seen a person yet who sought power and should have had it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to your personal roots. You can tell me if you would like about your early childhood. And I know right before we started recording, we were talking about, you're about to tell me about your work in a bookstore. Maybe that's a little too late though. You can start where you'd like, as early as you like, maybe at the bookstore.
Well, it's so funny when people meet me that when they start interacting with me over a period of time and they start hearing about like, well, what was your upbringing like? And really it's on par with the stuff that was in Dave Pelzer's book, The Child Called It. And usually after enough time, they're like, you know, that's enough, close the closet. You know, a skeleton didn't fall out. It was a whole graveyard.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not very pleasant by any stretch of the imagination. It was horrifically abusive, violent, just a horrible way to start life. Just really like the way I have two half brothers, the way the one brother turned out, which is a exquisitely professional person who lies and creates incredibly impressive documents that are forgeries.
Wow.
But he's also a culinary chef, but he works at
sociopath.
What's that?
Is he a sociopath?
Pretty close to it.
Yeah.
He's abused about everybody in the family who were females, manipulating them into doing something and ruining their finances and their lives and everything. And it's funny how one person can be in an environment and go one way and the other one goes the other way.
Yeah.
And I found myself when I would be in circles of other psychologists and sociologists, and some would adhere to this principle that, you know, you're a victim of your environment and social forces caused you to go out and steal, rape, and pillage.
Yeah.
Well, no, because that's what happened to me, and I in no shape or form went down that direction. So I don't buy this idea that people are volitionless and are just, you know, puppets in control of their fate or whatever you want to term it. I don't get that. When you're given a choice, like, do I take the donut that's laying there knowing my coworkers want it or not? And then when they ask you, did you take that? You say no, but there's crumbs on your shirt. You're already failing morally on a very deep level with just superficial things. So I'm not even one that thinks white lies are even a good thing, because I hate to use the cliche of slippery slope argument, but it kind of does go there in some regards.
Yeah.
And this is just seen across the board in media. Let me circle back around again. So for myself, coming up in that abuse, and even over 2 years of violent rape by a coworker of my father,
Jesus.
because I was what we called in the 80s a latchkey kid.
Right.
And he worked with my dad, but lived next to us. And so my dad was off getting drunk and I was home alone. So he knew I was right for the pickings. So he would come over 1 to 3 times a week and do what he did. Or I would be taken to his place. But anyways, the sordid details are just more disgusting than I want to even get into on this podcast. If somebody really wants details, email me and I can send you, you know, lurid poems or whatever that talk about the behavior. But anyway, so then I started training in martial arts when I was 13 because I had a very strong drive towards Buddhism.
Wait, so because I was about to ask, how did you not, like, when you're telling me the story, I want to go kill that person. And then, like, how do you not want to kill that person? Or do you want to kill that person? And then when you said, you know, I had a strong drive to I thought you were going to say to kill him. And so I went into martial arts.
Well, because of the abusive relationship with my father and the social construct of the family structure when you're in an alcoholic family or a drug family for that matter. Back in the 80s, it was more 70s, 80s, it was more alcohol. You learn to keep the family secret, and you learn to be a a willing victim, almost a Stockholm syndrome type of mentality. And you are held captive by the ones that you love and you look to love. So you correlate abuse, violence with satisfaction of emotional relationship. It's a big psychological mind screw, which is why, most people that grow up in those environments don't really turn out for the best, or they become extremely strong people and embrace that what doesn't kill me makes me stronger mentality.
Because in order to untangle all of that and get back to like something real inside of you has to be just.
Well, I just a couple weeks ago I just turned 49, and I'm still unpacking it. It's you can't do that to a human being in their formation years and not screw them up like unconsciously, which is like 95% of us. True. At like the bottom level of the iceberg under the ocean. You can't do that to someone. It just doesn't work that way. Right. And especially for a male in our society, violent rape really has a double entendre mind screw with you because of the correlation of receiving sex as a male making you a bitch or weak, correlating with the symbolic language used towards women as a receiver of sex. So there's that fear with males of being considered passive, weak, and all that you have to carry around as a kid and hope your friends don't find out, because the girls wouldn't be as freaked out.
Right.
And I don't mean this in a misogynistic way, but female rape is like normalized in our culture.
Right. I'm glad you're saying this, because I feel like right now we have this big problem with gender and sex issues, and there are a lot of them, but what you're saying I think is totally true. And I have felt very bad for males lately, because I don't think on top of what you're describing of how the abuse can be, from what I understand, so much psychologically more damaging. I don't even know if I could say more. Anyway, it's very psychologically damaging in addition to everything else. I feel like they're not allowed to talk about. You're not allowed to talk about it as much, because it's a female problem. And we're only talking about the females. So only females are allowed to be victims.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, like, if a woman's raped, she can come forward and everybody's like, that piece of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But if a man says it, all the men are like, whoa, dude. Like, let's not go there. Like, I don't want to talk about it because I'm so freaked out that I would rather attack you than actually admit that's horrible, because it's like psychologically so frightening to a male that they just, it happened. Let's not talk about it.
Let's avoid it completely.
Right. Yeah. Like, let's just repress those emotions. Let them just bubble up in other like neurotic ways.
Well, that's an even bigger testament to the fact that you have, I know you're saying you're still dealing with it and you're always going to probably, and I get that, but as far as I can tell, you're a very healed and whole person, especially compared to people who maybe didn't go through something like that and still haven't, achieved your level of sort of self-health. And so I guess kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, when I was young, at like even age 8, the abuse started at 9 when I moved from one town to another. But at age 8, because of the alcoholism in my family, I was already going to Children's Alcoholic Anonymous for family members, and going to Teen Anonymous and all that, and going to visit my father in various treatment facilities, which ironically, the first one I started working in was one that he was in.
Wow.
So there's this whole like karmatic circle thing you can get into with that. And because I sat through those meetings and watching the cathartic process of admitting the problem and learning to cope with it in a group setting, I think it was kind of engendered in my mind that that's pretty cool working through that. I ought to learn how that works and kind of see where I kind of come into play with that. And
how powerful.
So when I was about 12, I picked up a book on Zen in a local library, And it just like the light bulb popped on, and I'm like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't really get into the whole groveling in front of the dead guy on the cross thing, but this makes a lot of sense, stilling myself and looking into my mind and what's really going on, and why have patterns been set up to why I'm in the environment I'm in, and well, why the heck is that person choosing to do that, and what happened to them to make them, and then does the whole ball, the whole ball starts unraveling, and you're like, all right, well, let's see how far like this rabbit hole goes and how it goes with me and like the rest of society. So it's just everything kind of compiled together. And then in the my hometown of Ashland, Ohio, which we moved back to when I moved from the other town I was in, which was Norwalk, Ohio, Olean, Ohio, there was an ex-Shaolin monk living in a town and was training kids on the side in Kung Fu. And so it was being spread around us amongst ourselves. And that kind of really got me into it to start with, because I had read the book on Zen and also on Bodhidharma, who was back then, unbeknownst to most people, was considered the founder of Kung Fu in China, which is completely incorrect and historically inaccurate. But myths are sometimes much more fun for people to regurgitate.
Yeah.
And so I started training in the arts and continued repeatedly, no matter which town we moved in. Or then after my father's death, I continued to move in myself. Akron, Cleveland, Columbus, Ashland, Norwalk. I moved to Alaska. We moved to Maryland later on, all over the place. And then I have a teacher who's in Arkansas also. And I would actually drive 14 hours to go train with him for a weekend.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's a good teacher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He's a fantastic, he's kind of just like me, real to the point, down to earth, no BS. And that's why we got along. The story of actually meeting him is like something out of a ridiculous Kung Fu Saturday, chop sake flick.
Oh my God. Tell us the story of meeting him.
Well, let me.
If you want it, okay. Maybe later.
let me go back to the teen years, and then I'll correlate into how I got into that when I lived in Maryland. Okay. And so I was training in that to starting out with at age 13, because my mind was, I'm going to beat my dad's ass one day when he lips off to me and like confronts me. The tables are going to turn. And I remember when I was into my 16s, he threatened me the one day, and I just unconsciously got into a stance and I faced him, and my expression changed of, we're both predators now. Let's get it on. I'm taller than you now. I might not be as like bulky, but I know where to hit now, and I'm pretty fast after 3 years of training. Yeah. And he kind of just stopped and then just yelled at me, and then that was the end of it. And then the physical abuse stopped and the verbal abuse kind of calmed down, but I never actually got to take him out, because that same year he then killed himself.
Oh my God.
And so it just gets better. It's really great.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's people were so worried about me, because when he killed himself, my mom was hugging me and crying me and telling, oh my God, your father's dead. And I remember looking over her shoulder going, thank God.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I'm glad he did it and I didn't have to.
Wow.
And for me, it was like, being captive to Hannibal Lecter for 16 years and then he offs himself. It's like, that's fabulous. I didn't have to do it. And I was just like gleefully happy after that. And everybody, including counselors, were like, there's something wrong with Alan. You've got to really watch him. He's too happy. I don't think he's processing what's going on. No, I'm processing it. I'm glad as hell what's going on. I'm out of Auschwitz now and I can like go on and eat and live. And then we moved out of that house, thank goodness. And I remember standing out there while they were wheeling his body away, and the neighbors were standing out watching, and I come out and I just kind of waved and I said, "Show's over, folks. He's dead. You can go back inside and stop gawking." And they like didn't know what to do with that. But
because you're like having a sense of humor and there's your father.
Right. Yeah, and I'm like, no, I'm happy as hell. It's all done with, folks. The cartoon's over. That's all, folks. Move on. And people just don't know how to handle that. But they hadn't grown up with it, so it's not normalcy for them. That's why my humor is so dark all the time.
Right.
And I can laugh through the Evil Dead series from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
And then I continued to train in various systems and traveling up to the Akron, Cleveland area. I'm sure you know where those are. That's constantly in the news, the Cavs or whatever.
I have no idea, but I am kind of mentally challenged when it comes to geography.
Well,
and I'm a social studies
actually,
teacher.
even saying that means it's pretty much the opposite.
Yeah.
And then because I had already started early on in my life, I started working at then 14. My first job was a Pizza Hut job, and began to immediately, upon working, that whole controlling authoritarian management style, which is like 99.9% of them in the US, because of my history, had an immediate hatred towards and just butted heads like instantaneously. And that kind of made me pick up books on Marxism and things like that about the bourgeoisie and proletariat. And I would read it going, damn straight, Carl, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, because it's probably not just your, history and your dislike of power or control, but also like somewhere in you had to know that you're intelligent. And let's face it, most of our bosses, especially if you're an intelligent person, are kind of idiots. Like they're
principle.
Yeah.
one level above their incompetence every time.
Yes. And so you're kind of like, why are you the one telling me what to do?
Paid more than me. Like, no, that doesn't make sense at all. This is exactly what Mark is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first thing I bought with my check was a leather bomber jacket. I love that jacket so much. And then started working at a Walden Books when I was 16. And being in the bookstore, I was able to, while I was at the register doing nothing, just scroll through the catalog, which at that time, every week you were given discs to upload the catalog of books in existence. So it was like really almost Flintstone level technology.
Yeah, compared to
the registers and computers were run on DOS. And most people, you say that word and they're like, what's that mean?
What's DOS?
Right, yeah. Like, did you get antibiotics for that?
Yeah.
And so, and then I started just like really, really, really gathering my religious and occult library for myself. And,
so which is kind of antithetical to Marxism and communism. There's this very materialist, anti-spiritual sort of rhetoric and ideology. So how did that, I guess you had the Zen beforehand, so maybe you just kind of like never took that part of the communism, socialism pill?
I've been very, almost from the beginning, I have followed this path very similar to what William Blake said, which is, I'm a creator. I take other people's systems and make it my own.
Yeah.
Very Borg-like.
Isn't that what syncretism is? I've just learned this word, and it was someone from the Eyes Open group on Facebook, Teo Del Carmen, shout out to Teo, who said she likes syncretism. And I was like, what is that? And I looked it up, and it's kind of like when you take pieces of everything. I think it only has to do with religion and not necessarily like philosophies and ideologies. So perhaps that's not what you're talking about. But I like that methodology of like, you're going through life and you're going to get all the little pieces, little nuggets of gold as you go. Because why would you ignore nuggets of gold just because they don't fit into this like thing that you've chosen? This like, you
only need to collect emeralds. Forget all the rubies and diamonds.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I'm going to go to the island and pick up a rainbow of gems and take them all home and do what I want with it.
All the treasures.
Right. And I became very instantaneously averse towards Orthodox religion very quickly, because most of them are just blatant hypocrites. And growing up in the 70s and 80s, I lived through the whole satanic panic where everybody that plays D&D is sacrificing their cat and laying around naked drinking Mountain Dew all weekend. It's just this ridiculous stereotype of people that it's like, I'm not like that. I'm pretty intelligent and play D&D every weekend. I mean, one of the people that was in my group that I played with all the time was Ernie Klein, who wrote Ready Player One.
What?
So he's one of my friends I grew up with, which is really kind of funny.
That's so sweet.
Oh yeah. And so
I want to play that book. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I want to read that book.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah,
the movie.
Like 80s flashback hardcore, and awesome. It's so funny because everything in it, I can go, know where he got that from, know where he got that from. Like,
how fascinating to be able to watch someone produce something like that, and you understand the psychology and the background, like the roots of it.
I mean, have you seen the movie?
No. Okay. I mean, I would. It's just I'm really bad at watching movies.
Well, it's funny because I watched a couple of these more Christian-oriented conspiracy theorists on YouTube, breaking down the movie, how it's a giant Illuminati programming system. And this guy was going on about this van that's in the movie has this dynamic looking face with a big open mouth. And he's like, why would he put that on there? Obviously, that's a satanic reference to Lucifer. And I started rolling in my chair watching this because the image on the van is a sculpture that's in a Dungeons and Dragons module that we used to always try to beat because it's one of the hardest modules in existence. And it's a face that's on a wall that if you jump through it, you're annihilated. So it was just an icon from our childhood that we used to joke about all the time that he put in a movie. And it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're just fishing in thin air, just like trying to pull things together. And so that just goes to the whole aspect of the way people adopt a certain orthodox view and just they box set everything where if it's in the box, it's holy. If it's outside the box, which is 99.9% of the rest of the universe, the devil did it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not
so
correct. And, you know, I had to explain to someone, a friend of mine's wife, that you do know that Easter and Christmas and Halloween, they all come from the same Celtic religion, right? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I started explaining it to her, and I could see in the front seat her brow was crunching up the more that I talked. And I was like, I better stop while I'm ahead or she's going to kick me out of the car.
She's going to think you're a Satanist for even knowing about it and talking about it.
And it's just funny to speak to people that are so orthodox and they don't
never questioned it. They've never researched it. They've never read. Most Christians have never read the Bible. Like I read the Bible not for fun. Well, yeah, for fun, because I was interested in what it had to say, not because I was like a religious devotee, however you say that word, devotee. And it was an awesome cultural, historical text, and then it also has really deep, nuggets of spiritual wisdom, which I'm sure most of which I've totally missed because there's probably so much in there. But why have I read it? Probably some books multiple times, and then Christians haven't even read it. Like, that's crazy. Well, how do you call yourself a Christian if you can't even read your own text? It's just weird.
Well, it's funny because when you talk to a lot of atheists, people will go, well, what made you an atheist? And they'll usually go, I sat down and actually read the Bible.
I read the Bible.
Yeah, it's like rape, murder, genocide. Everybody dies. Everybody's raped. Everybody's committing adultery. Like, these are the chosen people?
Yeah,
okay.
These are the chosen people.
That's like, I see where the root of today's problems come from.
And that God is an asshole. Fuck that God. Yeah. Who is that God? We need to take him down.
I'm right, like in one of the books I'm writing in, I have a section that basically just outright like castigates deities. I don't even give them the term God. I just call them deities. Yeah. I don't want to give them that much respect. And it's never capitalized. And I just say, it's no wonderment that every God that human beings worship are just as emotionally insecure, childish, and megalomaniac and violent as their worshipers. They're basically just one and the same thing, which is why they pick up worshiping them, because now they can divinely justify being an asshole to anybody they want.
It's just this madness of rationalization.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, we should be able to do an inquisition and take out every woman who's got red hair and a mole on them. Obviously, they're worshiping the devil. Like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense at all. Your mother had that, and she's from the devil.
Yeah.
Doesn't it you from the devil? Like, the more you use logic, the more that they're like, I'm going to have to murder you. You know, they don't want to go with it anymore. But,
logic is the enemy of like most people in our society for some reason, no matter what we're talking about. Like we could be talking about politics, we could be talking about philosophy, we could be talking about religion, and you bring up, if you're just logical, you can ask questions, even like simple questions, and people will just like spit and hiss and kick you. And I sometimes am genuinely afraid to say what I think, because I feel like people are just so freakishly clutching to whatever the tiny little bit they have, and they just do not want to open their eyes. You threaten to open their eyes for them, and they're like, I know they're not going to literally murder me, but like, I don't know, you lose friends, people, you know, try to get you fired.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure. Well, it's, you know, I was talking to some people, and I said, it's funny that people nowadays, they get so aggravated with these religious zealots that try to convert you on the spot. But I'm like, you should feel glad that's all they can do, because in the United States, they're pretty defanged, where in the past they would just run you through with a sword if you didn't accept or hug whatever they're telling you, and they would just outright genocide you right away, and it would be divinely right. Now they kind of gotta morally shame you in public, attack you socially, say you're going to burn in hell, but they can't really lay their hands on you normally.
That's a good point.
Get away with it, they will. I mean, you have the ones that like go into abortion clinics and shoot them up, but or are pro-life, pro-death penalty. Like, okay,
yeah, that's always a weird one,
right? Yeah, like what? So right away, I began into the occult and religion very heavily. And even when I was in fourth grade, I found my old report card, ironically, and my mother made a comment that my middle name is Brian, and that's what I was originally called. Brian keeps bringing home these really complicated books on religion and history. I don't think he understands them, but he really likes the pictures and can get a lot from them. So right away, I was very in love with, I remember the Osborne Elementary Library, and they had books on Egyptian gods, the Norse gods, the Greek gods, and I got them out every week. And the librarian's like, Brian, you need to let somebody else get those out. Really? And
you're like, no, this is what I want.
I don't want to read that, you know, or they get it out one day and bring it back because it wasn't interesting or whatever. But
it's like your soul was like, I know what you need, and it's this. Go get it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, of course, what got me early on into Dungeons and Dragons, because it's flights of fancy. The gods are involved. There's magic. I mean, who doesn't like that? Except, I don't know, the jocks in school, I guess.
Really unintelligent people.
Right. Yeah. You know, being imagination.
Judgmental.
You know, don't you like my sneakers? No, I could really care less about that. And then when I was in high school, because of the upbringing, I was bullied extremely badly. Because I was used to being victimized, I wouldn't fight back.
Right.
It's like when
it's that psychology that gets set up there, and you can't. I could never put my finger on what that is, but people just know. People are automatically, as soon as they interact, vying for who's alpha and who's not, who's like, you know, going to be, I don't even want to say weak, because I don't think that's the right word, but who's been conditioned, I guess, to accept this, and who hasn't, who's going to have boundaries, and you're going to get pushed until you have a firm boundary. And it just happens. It just happens in every social situation, I think, like not even just in school where it's the worst, I think, because it's such a false construct. But but everywhere, you know, whenever I start a new job, I notice adults are doing it to me too. Like everyone's trying to figure out if I'm going to crumble underneath them or be their little bitch, or if I'm going to, you know, be strong. So yeah, it's unfortunate that you had that dynamic, because it's not, you can't hide it.
But and then I remember when he killed himself, and I went back to school, high school, my junior year. I just, the one day I was being picked on, and this guy sitting behind me was flicking spit on me, and I kind of finally realized it and reached back and felt it, and just I snapped and stood up, and he just looked at me. He's like, "What are you going to do?" And I just picked up a chair and beat the hell out of him.
It's like, that's what I'm going to do.
He laid in his chair, and I sat back down, and a teacher came in like, "What's going on in here?" And no one would say anything. And then progressively after that, I basically just demolished every bully that stepped up to the plate. Guy cut in front of me in line at the cafeteria. I said, "If you don't get out of line, I'm going to break my tray over your head." And he didn't, and so I broke it over his head, and he left the line. Another guy kept taking my fries. I stabbed him in the hand with a fork. I warned him.
Damn.
Another really spoiled, socially high, rich kid in art class kept moving this object we were trying to draw shadows with. And I said, "If you do it again, I'm going to pick up this metal ruler and I'm going to rack you in the face." And he just looked at me and did it. And so I just hit him in the face. And the teacher sent me down to the principal's office, and then I told him what to go get jacked with.
Yeah.
And after that, they're like, "There's no controlling this boy." Well, no, you just need to stay away from me and out of my space and stop trying to be a predator to me, because I'm not going to put up with it anymore.
Respect my boundaries or else.
And then because I was, the man of the house was gone, when I was in my senior year, I was working 3 jobs to support myself and my mom. And I was failing in school. And they called me into the office and said, excuse me, my junior year. And then in my senior year, they called me in and said, "You're going to fail if you don't succeed, and we don't want you to fail. So what we're going to do is set up your credits that if you take 7 classes the first half of the year, 6 the first half of the year, and 7 in the last half, you'll just skate by with what you need." Okay, that's fine. Get off my back.
Mm-hmm.
So I started going, and then right at the end of the first half of the year, they called me in and said, "We goofed up. You're going to be half a credit short. You'll have to come back next half a year." And I said, "I've had it with you idiots." And I said, "I'm going to walk out of here, and I'm not going to come back. And you can trust me, my mom's going to be behind me on this." And I never went back to school. And I went and got my GED and scored perfect, and then started tutoring other adults and kids, and then went and got my bachelor's and master's.
Do they know that? Do they know you did that? Because I feel like people like that are probably, I don't know. I guess I can't judge them because I don't know what was going on. But I'm also very sorry that they're so inept, because that is your life. Whether it's half a credit or whatever it is, it's like, that's your life.
Well, I could tell when they were sitting me down and explaining it to me, they thought I was going to just go off. And it was kind of just like, okay, well, that's the end of you guys. I'm not going to trust you anymore. I put my faith in what you said, and you stabbed me in the back. No shocker there. So I'm out of here. See you a-holes later. And just walked out the door, got in my car, drove home, told my mom, and that was the end of it. I just worked, 3 different jobs, bringing home the bacon. And then I went into college, and appropriately in around 1998 and 1989 and 1990, I graduated 88. Horrible prom. I wrote about that in my one book. That was a great story. I even put up the picture of the girl I was with and put that black bar across her eyes, just to kind of humiliate her for the stuff she did. I appropriately flunked out of college because I became a raging alcoholic.
Oh, it came full circle.
Yeah.
I did not know this part of the story. So how did you, like, because I'm fascinated because I also grew up in a very shitty situation. My father was an alcoholic, and for a while I was very anti-alcohol. I was like,
Yes.
I will never drink because that shit fucking ruins lives. And then
Yeah.
I finally did. And so, like, how did you justify to yourself to start drinking, and how did it kind of,
You don't.
if you want to get into it?
I was
Yeah,
just like, F it. I'm going to do it regardless. I'm having a great time.
it's fun.
My friend and I, who were in college, his family owned 6 bars. So we had a constant flow of liquor no matter what we
Oh,
did. And it's the town of Shelby, Ohio, which is where we threw our parties at his house. Like one night we had the entire football team, soccer team, swim team, and cheerleaders at the house partying at the same time.
so
Like,
much sex that night. So many people were conceived that night.
well, well, to tell you a little bit about myself, well, this is getting into like real personal stuff, but I never
Feel free.
I never
So
even did anything sexually until I was actually 21 or 22 because
That
I was so
makes sense.
traumatized and terrorized by it. I
Right.
couldn't do anything. I was unable. I was almost literally impotent at the thought of being close to someone because the correlation of violence and abuse with it. My brain was like, nope, your body's not going to operate, dude.
I
And
can't imagine
and I kind of had to save grace because the couple girls I did date were like, I must really suck if I can't turn you on. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
But,
it must be you.
right, yeah, like, yeah, we should break up. Whew, you know. But so such things like that was greatly anxiety, humiliating for me to even do it. But when I was younger, I was considered kind of like a good-looking guy with long hair and a trim beard. I can even send you an image one time to let you see what I used to look like.
I believe
People usually like laugh at it like that was you. But and so I flunked out of college. And then I took that time to go with Ernie and our 2 other friends, Chris and Jay, who was in the D&D group and went to high school together, and then another friend of Ernie's from college. And we got in 2 of our cars with a pop-up tent and drove to Alaska and lived there in 2001.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Excuse me, 1991. And we lived in Alaska, and then we had a falling out, and they came back, and I stayed there and got involved in, all kinds of odd stuff.
Crystal meth?
No.
Just guessing because Alaska is notorious.
No. Well, when I was up there in 91, they had just illegalized marijuana, so everybody did it. I was a freak show because I had never done it.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe that I was that clean.
Right.
They were worried about me being around, but their image of Ohio is dumb cow hicks. So they thought, and it's like, no, actually, I'm kind of an Ohio intellectual. You've got me wrong. And so I first used it up there and found out I have like 0 tolerance to it. If you put marijuana in a bowl and I take like a decent hit, like when I breathe out, you can see a stream of smoke. The effects on me are actually on par with LSD.
I am so with you. People do not get it. I'm like, it's not that I can't get high. It's that if I do, I'll be fucking gone from this dimension for a while.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm not here anymore.
And then I also tried LSD and took 1 square, and I was up for almost 3 days. The rest of the group was really worried about me. They're like, that shouldn't happen to a normal person.
Even if you had like 10 hits on that 1 square, it would still be not that long. Yeah, that's crazy.
And so they came over
but you have like, sorry, but like you have, don't you also have sort of, I would say, skills and kind of traveling to other planes or?
Yes.
So I think that is kind of an aspect of that, is that drugs like that, because I think drugs like that have that effect on people normally. And so if you already have that skill, then it's kind of just like, wow, you didn't need this. It's like
if
exacerbating.
Right. If you learn those skills, you literally are changing the structure of the brain and opening areas up that 95% of the population don't.
Wow,
So when you take drugs,
that.
it's going to hit those areas that aren't normally open on people, and they're just going to like open them, you know, big doors for you,
Extra
like Huxley
wide.
says, doors of perception. And so it wasn't the pleasantest thing for me. And after that, I was like, nope, no more. In fact, there was a girl I was seeing, and she kissed me and then like hotboxed it into my mouth after she had taken a hit. And I was like beyond pissed and basically told her, get out. You're never getting in my car again. You need to get out of here.
Seriously, you can't trust someone that's with like your mental space. That's crazy.
Well, she thought it was being cool, and it's like, no, not for me. You should have asked me first.
Yeah.
Talk
about anyway, consent.
It's so funny. It's so funny when I tell people stories. It's like I sound like a complete F up. But
I do not agree, but I understand what you mean. Like people are used to someone as like successful and accomplished as you having a very like white bread kind of straight path through the traditional areas of life, and you definitely don't have that.
Yeah, and then I got involved with up there with some of the major dealers in the town of Anchorage, and they were very close friends. And there was a big drug turf war going on up there. And I said, I don't really want to be in the middle of this because of the skills I possessed occult-wise and also physically. I was a very useful person in that group.
Useful ally.
Right. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to get involved in this and end up killing someone. So I said, I've got to go back to the States. So I sold my car and then just flew back. A side note, when I was up there, I went out to party with some people, and I was like, you know, I don't want any narcotics. I'll just grab a couple beers. That's okay. I don't need to be up for 10 days straight. And now I know people that probably hear this story are going to go, that's bullshit. You know, you're totally lying, Alan. But Alaska is a very unique environment, and there's a lot of primordial stuff up there that people don't understand.
Ooh, yeah.
And they said, we're going to go pick somebody up. Whatever you see, do not open your mouth, do not say anything, and sure as hell don't stare at him. And I said, okay. And we drove into this wooded alcove, and I watched a wolf come out, turn into a person naked, get into the car, put on the clothes they bought with them. He went out and partied with us all night, and they took him back and dropped him off. And I was like, okay. And they said, that's normal for up here. He just comes in and out every so often to hang out with us. We're glad that you behaved yourself and didn't ask him any stupid questions. And it's like, no, I'm probably not going to bring that up when he gets in the car with me, dumbass.
Yeah.
So needless to say, that was a really rude introduction to seeing stuff that's like blatantly out there that you only hear in legends.
Yeah.
And what I gathered when I talked to people, a lot of lycanthropes live up there because humans don't jack it up, and they can live off it themselves and come back down into town to party, mate, whatever, and then go back into the woods. I met a guy who's a gold prospector, and he comes down out of the mountains every so often, turns his gold in, relays stories of the paranormal and crazy stuff he saw in the mountains and all the like weird creatures that live up there. A lot of the stuff very much has mimicking capabilities, which is why you don't see it. And I got to learn a lot of weird stuff that goes on up there that I later would hear with people that did paranormal investigations and talked to natives. My experience with natives up there was not pleasant at all. I tried to go out on a date with a native girl, and I showed up to the movie theater, and she was standing there with 5 big native guys. And I got out, and they asked if I was Alan, and I said, yeah. And they're like, are you the one that thinks you're going to date our sister? And I knew there was trouble. And I said, well, I was like hoping to. I really like her, and they're like, "No, bro, that's not going to happen. You're not going to taint her with your whiteness. So you need to get back in your car and just move on." Message received, dude. I'll be going out of here now. So,
very insular.
Yeah, it was like, you're not gonna, like, you think you're gonna, touch her? Like, you must be insane. You're gonna be dead, dude. Okay, I'm out of here. No problem. I'll go back to, Europeans in town. So, and so
I take that Wolfman or lycanthrope, as you said, has anything to do with the native tribes up there, or is that
I didn't get into the details too much.
Okay.
The only other really extremely jacked up thing I saw up there was, and I have tried to talk to people who live in Alaska, do investigations in there, and are paranormal scholars, and not a single person has any idea of what I'm talking about. I went into two different stores. One was a Walden Books. I can't remember the other store. And the other one I saw was this guy in a suit talking at the government offices in Anchorage. Their faces look like a
wax figure?
No, a combination between blotchiness, a mutant, and a pufferfish.
So it's definitely not a man in black then.
No. I looked up every disease on the internet and in my library. Nothing correlates with this. At first, I thought maybe there's a population of people that moved here because people don't screw with you in Alaska. But every time I would ask someone, they're like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And I'm like, okay, maybe there's a group of people that can kind of like camouflage themselves, but people who are more awake can see them.
That's what I was just going to ask.
When I stared at them, they kind of looked at me very angrily, like, "Is there something you're looking at?" And I, nope. And I would just go about my business.
So, because I was going to say, like, is it maybe no one else could see that and you could? But then does that mean that the wolf guy was similar and that, but you said your friends also knew it and saw it.
Yeah, that one's very blatant. These other things, I still to this day, no clue what they are. Not a single person I've talked to in the past years have any idea. People who live there have asked their parents. They are dumbfounded at what I'm saying. When I was there at the time, the one Walden Books I was in, I kind of looked at my friend and I said, "Does that person look a little odd to you?" And he's like, "How?"
Yeah, okay. So basically no.
Yeah.
So what, was like, have you never seen anything like that outside of Alaska? So it was a local thing?
Now, I don't know if there's a population of people up there that breed amongst themselves and they exist there. I don't know. I mean, beings like that are freaking all around us. So that's just probably some enclave in that area. As far as I know, they're just in Anchorage. Beyond that, I have no idea. I really hope asking people and talking about it, I don't get like a knock on my door like, "You need to shut up, dude."
Yeah.
Like a group of them standing out there like, "We had a good thing going till you opened your big mouth and your third eye." So and then I came back to Ohio and went back to college. I started out in anthropology and continued into sociology and psychology. I've got a major in psych with a minor in criminology and sociology. And so
were you kind of going to do like the CSI thing or detective stuff, or what were you kind of
No. I studied personally hardcore Freud and Jung. And I also studied Pascal, all of them on my personal time and really like internalized it. And I was so good at it that my college, which is a branch of Ohio State University, go Buckeyes, their teachers, which were more research psychologists, which gave me a really good foundation in actual legitimate proof of what you say would have me get up in class and present psychoanalysis, psychotherapy theory, and symbolism of Jungian psychology. They would just say, take it away, Alan. So I was trusted that much by the professors and the PhDs. My knowledge was so deep on it.
So really, you should have a PhD. You just didn't pay for it.
Probably, but, you know, PhD piled high and deep. So I'm very averse to the learning environment at colleges with these professors wanting you to just regurgitate what they want and listen to their programming. And I fought it all the way, and they finally just gave up, like, we're not going to argue with you anymore because you'll call us out in the middle of class. I had no fear whatsoever.
Well, good, though, because what good is any kind of a teacher if you can't be criticized and take part in the learning process? I hate, I hate our conception of education.
Right.
Yeah.
You're programming. And my papers didn't reflect it. My oral presentations didn't reflect it, but I got A's regardless. The screen just changed. Did you know that?
No. What happened?
There was like a wave just washed across your image on my computer for some reason.
Oh, weird.
Oh, well, we'll keep going with it. If it gets worse, you know, maybe somebody will like break in during the interview and say, like, you know, like Max Headroom us.
I felt it, but I didn't see it. I was looking away because I was like, what's this feeling? And then you said that, and I'm like, weird. But what I was actually thinking of asking you, which is totally unrelated to what we were talking about when that happened, is what is your idea of, or do you have a concept of spirit guides? And if so, what do you think like that is, or who are these people?
I really don't. I don't even go to any deity for help.
Right.
Nonetheless, any underling being at all.
Okay.
So, and I don't take it as derogatory, whatever. If you guys don't like it, you send a thunderbolt.
Yeah.
But I don't get into, see, as I progressed into my 20s and 20s, I got heavily into the occult. Can you see the tattoo?
If you come a little bit to the right, I think we can.
But that originally was 3 6s. So I was like really hardcore. And I was, when the crunching AOL was available, I was online with the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set. So I was involved with all of those groups of people. I have all of their manuals sitting in my library. People that see them are like, oh my God, I can't believe you've got this. Yeah. Copies of all of their newsletters and pamphlets and teaching guides. So I went to every source I could find.
So it wasn't like you were drawn specifically to them. It was that you were exploring kind of everything, and that was just one of the many things. Or what did you find? What kind of?
Well, I got really heavily into what's called the left-hand path. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And I was like an extreme proponent of it, but actually at the same time doing very Buddhist martial arts things.
Right.
Actually, during that time, I joined and became heavily involved with a Gnostic church in Ohio and became ordained by them, ironically.
I forgot that. I forgot they were Gnostic, which is fascinating because I've been recently listening to a lot of Gnostic lectures, and I feel like people who are uneducated, if they were listening to some of the stuff, would think that it is somehow satanic or...
Right.
And so it's kind of blowing my mind. I'm like, even when you said you got the 666 tattoo, I remember not that long ago, someone's like, well, that's just a carbon molecule. And I'm like, wow, what if that is what 666 is? Like, it's really, we just have all of these triggers that are, you know, I guess that we get freaked out or that we're programmed to be afraid of. And then when you get down to it, it's like, maybe there's not something scary. And I am definitely not promoting Satanism right now, because my concept of it is that, you know, if Satan exists, which it seems like there has to, no matter how you cut it, like, even if you're just looking at the idea that all of this intent over thousands of years has gone into this name as something evil, then there's got to be like a thought form that has, you know, heaviness somewhere in this dimension that acts under that name. And so whether it's
like
that or it's actually, whether it's that or it's like actually there is and has always been a being named Satan. Like it still seems like a pretty bad dude, and so I'm not personally like, and maybe I'm ignorant, but I'm personally not down with that energy, I guess. But
Well,
I still am interested to know. I want to know more about what you found there, or why you sought that, or what value you found in it. But I also just think it's interesting that we're just programmed to automatically reject anything that we even like slightly associate with that.
Well, Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible was a very eye-opening book for me, and really kind of deprogrammed me with my original you're sinful, be guilty, God's watching you if you touch yourself mentality of the church and our culture. And I just unshackled my brain with that, and really, you know, I really, when he passed away, I really wanted some of his ashes they were selling in that little amulet. I'm like, this guy's pretty funny, because he's really kind of the original shitster, you know, that they call shitlords on podcasts now, because that's what he did. He just called himself a universal whoopee cushion because he just messed with people. I think he's hilarious.
But you got a great amount of good out of that if you're like being deprogrammed from all of that really heavy, horrible, negative shit in your life.
Right. So when someone would say, well, you're just an antichrist, well, kind of, yeah. And I enjoy that. So to me, those labels weren't frightening anymore. And I then opened my mind even further, and I got into working with certain energies and entities. I'm not going to verbally say their name, but the house I moved into with my mom, I went up into the attic and carved out a summoning circle and opened it up. And then that's from where I drew my knowledge, power, and strength to affect what I was evolving into. Call it a dark ritual, a dark song, a pact, whatever you want. I've since then split with that energy system and no longer work for them, whatever you want to call it.
Because when you do that, you have to make some kind of an exchange, right? So you give something up to get something from them.
I was going to.
Sorry, say that again.
They thought I was going to, much to their chagrin, which is why I'm not fancied by certain people anymore. They weren't going to control me and use me as a vehicle for what they want. No, I'm going to actually cuck you. Sorry. And so that's why I've made many enemies in certain circles, because of stuff I've done and pulled out of. Ohio has a insanely massive satanic coventry that's in every city and town. There's a town outside of my hometown called Polk, Ohio, that you can't stop anywhere in there, or you'll get asked by people immediately, and the police will be there in a matter of seconds, because the whole town is one giant blood coven.
Well, that is fucking terrifying.
It is. The towns in Ohio are literally something out of a Lovecraft novel. They literally are. That crazy ass inbred rich people who've made deals with demons. That's pretty much what it's like up here.
And do you think do you think that it's more like those entities and demons are literally kind of maneuvering everyone and controlling people, and that whole vibe and that whole, all the like activities and how they interrelate to each other in that area are because that entity is behind it? Or do you think people have more free will even in that situation?
I think it's both. Okay. Everybody's just manipulating everybody else. It's really just a free-for-all of egos running rampant.
Yeah. Good way to describe it.
Demons and devils and whatever, they've just got more pull in certain arenas, but their egos are even worse than some of the humans. So they're all just really stupid in my eyes. I mean, I made a joke in one of my writings where I said, you're supposed to summon this being that's going to alter the fabric of the universe, but before you get there, you got to kill a cat for it. If that being needs a dead cat to enact manipulation of the universe, that guy's a pussy.
That's true.
You know, I'm not going to ask you for help. I'd rather just keep the cat alive and just forge it myself. Like, nah, I'll pass on the offer, dude. I don't want to make a blood pact with you. I don't want to kill Fluffy to get a new car. You're pretty weak ass demon.
Yeah.
So I'm not impressed in any shape or form with demons and devils and whatever they want to call themselves. It really bores me, including all of the various deities. I just find them tripe and useless and have no purpose in my life for them at all, no matter what form they're in.
Am I wrong then in saying that probably they all leave you alone then?
Usually, yeah.
Because I think part of the power of entities like that is the attention and the fear that people will give them, you know.
Yep.
And if you're like, go fuck yourself, they're like,
right. Yeah,
I can't get anything from this.
Well, just like on Twitter, if you respond to their posts, they're gonna, it's gonna egg them on. But if you're like, no, I'm not gonna respond, they usually just blow away. And that's the same with the deities. I mean, the Egyptian deities ruled all of sub-Sahara Africa, whatever. Where are they now? They're in pawn shops and in museums being giggled at by 3-year-olds on a field trip. Where's your paradise? Where's your, heaven on earth? You've lost your power because all the minds focusing on you don't exist anymore. You've been disempowered. Really, the whole practice of all the deities is just like it is in role-playing games. It's really just the same thing. It's not a mockery of it. It's actually how it operates in real life. But people still want to go to the book section and say, I want the religious section, not the mythology section.
Yeah.
Well, they're all one, ma'am. How dare you?
Yeah. Oh, I went to go in, I think it was a Half Price Books, and I went to pick up a book. This story sucks because I can't even remember what I'm talking about, but whatever it was is a nonfiction book for sure. And it was in the fiction section, and it was even labeled as a nonfiction book with the call numbers and everything. And I went and brought it to the people's attention. I was like, you guys realize this is a, nonfiction book. It should be in the nonfiction section. And they just laughed and put it back in the fiction section. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with people?
Right. Yeah, there's one guy online who likes to take all of the Bibles and move it to the fiction section, and he finally got kicked out of a Barnes and Nobles for doing it.
Yeah.
You'll see bookstores where they'll have the Bibles out and have the sticker that says signed copy. I mean, people just don't get any stupider than that. I mean, at the Barnes and Nobles I was working at, I had a ancient literature book club, and people were coming up asking me if we're going to have author signings. Like, what do you mean?
What are you talking about?
Even one guy who was Indian, and we were reading the Ramayana, and the guy goes, "Oh, you are going to have a signing?" And I said, "You realize you're Indian, and Ramayana is one of the oldest epics, and you're Indian, and it's from India. Like, you don't even recognize your own culture, and you're Indian."
You should have just
that's like a sub-basement level of stupid.
Yeah. No, that's worse. I can do you better. There are people who don't know the difference between fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah.
That's fucking blowing my mind. Okay, and I'll admit, if you want to get really intellectual about it, you could argue that there's some of all in both, whatever, blah blah blah. But
right.
I mean, seriously, a fundamental level to not know the difference is pretty scary.
Yeah, I just went to a training, and they were saying when someone asks where the nonfiction is at, don't be nasty and say everything that's not fiction is nonfiction. It's like, well, there's kind of a reason booksellers react like that, because if you're reading, you probably should be smart enough to know the subcategories of all of the academics in our literature of our culture. Like, you got yourself dressed, didn't drink the poison under the sink, cooked your food, and drove here. You do have some cognitive ability. You kind of need to evolve a little further. I mean,
you gotta want to, though, and nobody wants to. That's another thing. And one of the Gnostic lectures I was just listening to is the reason why people are not free from suffering is because they don't want to be. And I was like, it's true. It's true. People are, I don't know. There's something wrong with us. But
they're just absolutely lazy.
Yes.
But so, anyways, as I was
scared,
I continued through college working towards my bachelor's, and during that time, went the way of computer programming and massage therapy, anthropology. So I was all over the board and had massive amounts of credits at 2 universities next to each other, actually. And then did another round of alcoholism and almost killed myself again. But finally graduated and then got my job, my fourth job as counseling in a juvenile facility, and continued my religious training, and then moved away from the Gnosticism and the occult and continued to refocus back on my Buddhist tradition, and then became ordained in 1998 with Lama Kadug of the Kunji Gompa Buddhist Church of Massachusetts. And then from there, continued to gather literature and train myself in Sanskrit, Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese, Pali, while also learning German and trying to study the scriptures and their core older text while training in martial arts. I gained multiple certifications in various systems, mastered various methods, and then continued counseling, and then met my soon-to-be wife, who was the sister of my best friend's bride, which I was his best man in a wedding, and we connected. And then randomly, how many years later, like 15, 18 years later, she's at a BW3s that I was at after counseling at the facility with the juveniles. And I asked them, I went up to them and said, I'm not hitting on you because I got tired of that crap. I just want to play darts with couples. Would you ladies like to play darts? And the one girl's like, obviously this guy's hitting on us. No, get over yourself. And then the other girl was cool about it, and she came over, and they're like, my name's Alan, and this is Mike, the other guy. And they're, I forget the other girl's name, and the one's like, I'm married. And she goes, what's your last name? And I was like, Cisco. And she goes, are you Matt Barnett's best friend? And I was like, whoever it is, I didn't date their sister. And she goes, no, I'm Mary, the one you were in the wedding with. I was his wife's his bridesmaid. Oh. And then ever since that day, we never separated from each other. And just
what a synchronicity.
Right. And then moved to Maryland. I gave up my 2 martial arts studios, my counseling position, and my job at the bookstore. And we moved to Maryland together. And then we got married and had our daughter. And while I was there, I published my first book, taught Buddhism, was a manager at 2 different Walden books when they still existed. Various adventures there. We were there during 9/11. So I had to put up with going around with robes and a big beard and getting pulled over and harassed and asked to look into my bags, my diaper bag.
It was like anyone who looked anything different.
And blow it up or whatever. But going into museums was a horror show. You have to open up your bag, your robe, sir. I'm not a Muslim. Sure you're not, sir. Yeah, there's a difference, dude.
They don't know the difference.
Right. And while I was there, actually, in Frederick, Maryland, which is by Fort Detrick, where all the anthrax came from, that was fun.
Jesus.
Yeah. And that's where I got my master's in thanatology, which is a study of death and bereavement. It's a psychological subcategory that very few people have a degree in.
Right. I've never even heard that word.
Yeah, it's based off Thanos, death in Greek, which is where the character from Marvel comes from.
Right.
So, because he's deaf. So, so I got a degree in death and bereavement, counseling, history, aspects of hospice, which I then went and worked and volunteered in hospice, and did various healings for people with the energy work of Qigong and acupuncture that I had learned and mastered. I also learned massage and chiropractic, so I have a large gamut of healing skills.
It's not just a large, it's a gigantically overwhelming gamut. Like, I can't even keep up with all the things you're listing. Well, I feel like you could just heal anyone.
Yeah. But, well, that's kind of funny, actually, too. In 99 or 97, I think it was, or 99, right before, after my I think it was right after my ordination, my thyroid shut down, and right now I'm 180 pounds, and I was at about 120.
Wow.
And then I went into a coma for days on end, and that's when I had my first near-death experience, and learned an awful lot during those trips.
Yeah.
And then came back, and
Are you going to tell us about the trip?
There's so much.
It could be its own like interview.
Right. I did write a book about it, and I'll probably publish it sooner or later, or just put it on a website for people just to go and read
Yeah.
and glean what they can from it. From the view of a non-Christian going to heaven and explaining what it's like.
Yeah.
Ironically, now some people would say, well, how do you know you went over there and you weren't just imagining it because of brain death and oxygen deprivation, blah, 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 typical stupid materialist talking points that don't understand near-death experience studies that have overwhelming amounts of evidence.
Just overwhelming.
Because when I was dying, my first professor, Jim McLeod, who was an anthropologist, had died. And over there, I saw him. And he led me around and explained things to me and told me how part of it works. And explained, nah, you're not going to stay. I know how pleasant it is. Sorry, dude, you've got to come back. That's how it works. Yeah, and I'm like, man, that really sucks, man, because this is really fun. Yeah. I know, but you're going to recover, and you're going to go back, and you're going to continue. There's a lot more. You have to learn. You have to grow. You can't move on yet. And then he explained to me how he died and why he died. And I came back and then talked to people who were involved in his death and asked them, did this happen? Is this the way his body looked? And they were amazed that I even knew that, because no one should know that. And I said, well, this is why I know it. Wow. Some were pissed. Some were grateful for the message. Nonetheless, that's how I knew what I experienced is what I experienced.
Yeah.
Plus, you just know.
Yes.
It's not a dream. It's totally different.
It's more like the evidence is for other people. You already know. Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm just going to pass this message on. Does this make sense? Yeah. And I have no idea how you know that. Well, from the source.
Yeah.
And so when I came back, they flushed me with a bunch of medication to revive me, and I was able to get up and start moving around. And my girlfriend at the time, we went to a restaurant, and while I was standing in the restroom, everything drained out of me, and I had no idea where I was at. I went out and was like, I'm in a total daze. I know I'm here with you, but I don't know who you are. And then I had to learn how to walk again, how to function, how to speak properly, how to do simple things like work a computer, how to feed myself, how to use like a pencil and a pen. So I was pretty screwed up for about 2 years till I finally recovered.
What was it? Stroke?
No, it was the thyroid shut down so far that like everything was shutting down on me. I couldn't eat. I couldn't function. I couldn't walk more than a couple feet. There was nothing processing in my stomach. So when people say they have a hypothyroid and are overweight, it doesn't work like that. You actually shut down and you don't digest anything, so you never eat. Wow. So sorry, folks.
Yeah.
So it completely obliterated my health, and I lost like so much of my memory. I couldn't remember anything or anyone. And it was really unnerving for a long time.
Yeah.
Because people would come up and talk to me, and I would have to say, I know you know me, but I just had a traumatic experience and almost died. I don't know who you are. and they would be like, come on, stop dicking around. No, seriously, I don't know who you are.
Wow.
And I had to do this for like dozens and dozens of people, all of my jobs. I had to go back to my martial arts studio and explain to my students, you got to give me time to figure out who all of you are. They were freaked out, of course.
Yeah.
My family members didn't know what to do, and it was just a complete shit show, for lack of better word. And finally gained my weight back, and then was able to go back to school after 2 quarters and actually function normally. And then I broke up with that girl, and during that time, my mom died. She had a heart attack in the house, and I was upstairs and I heard this big thud, and my girlfriend screams for me to get down, and she's on the floor doing the conniption thing because she had a heart attack. And so I did CPR on her, and they came and then took her away. And we went to the hospital, and they said, half her heart's been destroyed. Do you just want us to let her go? And I said, yeah, she, didn't want to be on life support or anything, so just let her go. And they said, okay, we'll contact you, and we'll let you know what's going to happen after that. And so I went home and walked in and had all of the paramedic material all over the front room. And I had to decide, should I clean it up or should I leave it there as a memento? And I just kind of picked some of it up, and I'm like, screw it. I ain't got to, I'm totally drained, and tried to sleep. And then got up the next morning and the phone rang, and my girlfriend's like, she hangs up the phone and she says, I don't even know how to tell you this, but they said, you've got to come to the hospital. Your mom's still alive.
Wow.
It's like, okay, like what WTF? This makes no sense.
You've dealt with her dying in a way, like you started to accept it, and now she's not dead.
Right. Yeah. We call this in hospice the Lazarus effect. They keep coming back and forth.
Weird.
And so I went up there, and she was in the room, and all the family was around wailing. And the doctor's like, she's just holding on. She won't let go. I think she wants to talk to you. So I stood next to her and I said, I'm here, Mom. I'm with you now. I know you don't want to be in this body. You didn't want to be a vegetable, and I think you're too damaged to actually stay here. So I'm going to be fine. You can go ahead and leave. Just get out of this thing and just move on. You don't have to stick around anymore. You've taught me enough. I'll be fine. It's okay. And then I actually saw her lift out of the body and float up into the ceiling and kind of like smile at me. And then the doctor said, she's actually passed away. And I'm like, I know she has.
Yeah.
And he's like, that was interesting. And then everybody was kind of standing there. And I said, Pat, my mom, she's gone. This is just a broken vessel. Say your goodbyes and let's just go about our business, and we'll have the funeral. And I walked out and trying to control myself, and got into the car, and the girlfriend was driving us home, and then this pig pulls us over, and this little short woman gets out exercising her authority and starts berating this about why we're driving like horrible and all this stuff. We were going like 27 and a 25, and I start crying uncontrollably. And the woman says, you need to stop that shit. That's not to get you out of a ticket, man. And my girlfriend's like, he just pulled a plug on his mom. And she's like, I don't think that's true. You're just trying to get out of a ticket. And so she let us go with the warning, and I had to go home with that. And we had the funeral in the same building my dad had his funeral in. And they buried her next to her. And then a few years later, when my daughter was born, and she was close to one, a little past around 1, my grandmother passed away. Wow. And then a few years later, my uncle, and then this year, my last remaining aunt. That's it. No more elders, just us cousins. So
you are the elder now.
Yeah, so death has been right on my doorstep like all the time.
I feel like you were the elder for most of your life, though.
Well,
realistically,
being abandoned, you have to be. like they generically says, you're going to become the adult in the family when your parent's an alcoholic, or if you're abandoned at home by yourself and no one's around and there's no food, you kind of figure out how to open a can of Chef and heat it up. So I grew up on Chef and cereal and sugar on bread and whatever bananas were in the house, and that's what I had to eat. Or if it became really bad, I'd grab a bug and eat it. So it was really horrible. So let's see.
It goes back to that thing you're saying earlier, though, too, where like there's multiple people in that situation, and your response to it was to be like, all right, well, I'm going to fucking keep moving forward and figure it out. You know, I'm going to do the best I can. Whereas other people are going to have a totally different response, often a lot less productive and a lot more negative.
And when I was in Maryland, I was researching martial arts that were associated with Buddhism, and I stumbled upon the most oldest, well, not the most oldest, but one of the most like hardcore direct ones, which actually came out of the Shanghai area of Tibet and China, that was created by a monk, and it was called the Lion's Roar system, based on the symbolism, the Buddha making a lion's roar. There's a whole mythology and symbolism involved with the martial art, and then it transferred into be called in Lama Pai, and then later on split off into two more branches, and one of the branches I tracked down after a year of research. And I called him and said, we're going to move back to Ohio. We're going to move soon. My wife's looking for a new job. Can I study with you? If I can, we'll move close to you so I can drive and train with you. And this guy's, oh, that's pretty, that's pretty dedicated. And I said, well, I'm a Buddhist priest, so I understand what's going on with the symbolism, and I'm not too shabby in martial arts. At that time, I had been doing it. Let's see, that was 2001, so 18 years. 36 years this year. I've been doing it 36 years. And he was kind of like pumped up about it. And then the phone conversations got real squirrely, and my spidey sense was going off like something's wrong with this guy. And then this very narcissistic, authoritarian personality just like clicked into place, and he started dictating things to me. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I've dealt with people like you in counseling multiple times. I can smell you a mile away. Our relationship's done and over with. No more of you. And I hung up on him, and then he called me back and he said, you're giving up too easy. No, I just can smell your BS a mile away, and I'm not going to deal with morons like you who have this cult idea. I've studied cults and I've dealt with them. I'm not getting involved with a person like you who uses people. And so we moved back to Fairborn, Ohio, where I'm at now.
Man, I was hoping that was like a test, and he's like, oh, you do have discernment or something.
Well, he liked the fact that I stood up to him, but he wanted me to prostrate myself to him and be the beta male, and it's not going to happen, dude.
Right.
I don't play that game with anybody, my wife or no one, and especially martial arts teachers, because I've had to put up with massively racist and arrogant crap being said to me by Asian teachers, just very horrible things about Americans and white people. And my whole life, I've been on the receiving end of a lot of racist garbage from people, from natives, from literal Africans, from blacks in the U.S., from Asians, Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese. I mean, just horrible things said to me. And it's like, I've never said anything ever like that. Like, I don't know where you're getting that at.
But you're not allowed to call it racism because you're white.
Right. And a male on top of it with blue eyes.
I really like this, that you're talking about all these teachers and their personality traits and all these horrible aspects of themselves. And I had the best advice I ever was given in choosing a teacher for anything was to look at the person's life, which includes their personality, and ask yourself if you would want to end up like that. Like, do I want that life? And do I want to be like that person? And if the answer is no to either of those, that's not a good teacher for you. And I'm like, that is such simple and such good advice.
Yeah.
Don't follow people you don't want to end up on the same path. That's where their path is headed.
Yeah, I would learn what I needed from them and then separate myself and move on, absorb it into my knowledge, and then continue to evolve.
Right.
And when we came back to Ohio, I was online discussing this system I wanted to know, and I got contacted by another teacher out of Arkansas, and he said, "Yeah, I'll teach you, man. It's cool, and I'll just drive up and kind of induct you into the system." Okay. And him and two of his students drove up from Arkansas, and we held them up at our house and cooked for them all weekend, had barbecues, and we trained for probably about 10 to 12 hours a day for 3 days straight. And
that is a good teacher.
Oh yeah. And then after that, I would drive down to him, and then he just gave me a boatload of videos to basically just learn what I needed from. And then from there, I just continued to internalize and evolve and pick up more and more that I've learned. And then I started teaching in Fairborn as kind of a centerpiece of Buddhism and martial arts, and had a pretty good Sangha, which is a community in Buddhism, and a Gwun, which is a studio in Chinese, and continued to teach and tried to educate people in my area. I went to a multitude of interfaith dialogues and prayer vigils and Thanksgiving giving feasts. I went to a church and talked about how do we interpret the gospel and Jesus himself. And it was me, this Christian leader of a local Christian college, really arrogant, self-centered prick, a Jew and a Muslim. And I was sitting there in my robes, and everybody else had their nice three-piece suits on. And the Christian guy made a comment towards me, trying to cuck me on the stage, and said, "Well, we can't all look as snazzy as Alan's in his expensive robes." And I looked at him in front of, I think it was 2,500 people on 3 video screens mic'd up. And I said, "Actually, these are pretty much cheap rags. You're the one who's wearing the expensive suit trying to put on a persona. I'm not really arrogant and shallow like that." And his face got beet red. And I thought he was going to stand up and punch me on stage because he was like gripping his chair. And it was like, "Nice try, dude. I've actually studied debate. You're not going to win against me because we religious Buddhists, we debate back and forth for hours on end. That's not going to work with me. So nice try, dude." And after we got done, after 2 hours, everybody was wandering around, and this line of people called me over, and they started lining up to shake my hand and hug me. And they were coming up, and they were all admitting to me they wanted to apologize because they thought I was the enemy and that we weren't doing the same thing, and we're all really doing the same thing. And some kid who was in a wheelchair that had MS made me come down so he could actually get up to hug me in tears and verbally apologize for me for the hate he had in his heart. And it was like holy crap. Like this was a line of people going to the back of the church.
This is like a giant counseling therapy session or something like you unlocked.
Yeah, that's about what it was. And like I could see the ministers of the church were getting more and more pissed as this went on. And it was like they felt like they were losing control. "I'm not going to take them out of here, dude, in like a giant wagon and wheel them to my house. Like, relax, folks, you know." And after that, needless to say, I was never invited back or asked questions or nothing follow-up. It was like, "You're done here, dude. Move on."
Don't you find that, though? Like, if you do a good enough job at something that the people around you don't want you there anymore?
Nope. You've destroyed our stereotype of the evil atheist Buddhist. How dare you do that? But
you've also destroyed their comfortable little illusion that they were really effective or that they were doing something really good, or you know what I mean? Like you came in and that actually had this profound effect on people. So like not only did you destroy that stereotype, but also this illusion they had about themselves. and their actions.
Well, I remember standing in the back, and one of the subdeacons said, I'm really glad you're coming here. I think this is going to be great. And I said, really, dude, we're all kind of doing the same thing. We're just doing it in a different way. And he goes, well, actually, no, we're not. We Christians are a lot different. And I said, actually, if you knew shit about your own tradition, you'd know that you're being pretty superficial and arrogant, and you don't know much about your own religion. And he was kind of like, how dare you? Like, I was ordained in that belief system when you were like itching in your daddy's pants. You need to move on. So just to say, I tried to be on the interfaith council in my town, unceremoniously told to get lost. We don't want your type here. It's only for Christians in town. Gotcha. I'll move on.
But it's interfaith.
Yeah. The irony's pretty thick. Trust me. Went on to the Air Force Base, because Wright Pat Air Force Base is right down the hill from me. And was in an interfaith Thanksgiving 2 years in a row. That was really fun. They had no idea to do with the stories and stuff that I recited. They're like, we've never heard anything like this before. Well, you need to get out of your wheelhouse and learn about the real world outside your box. Ironically, though, I can quote their scripture to them, including the Jew that was there. He didn't know what to do with that. You read the Haggadah? Yeah. Studied the Kabbalah, studied the various Seprachim, I think it's called, and named off a couple other books. And he's like, what's the books you guys use? And
well, and the fact that you can remember them all, details from them, what they're called, like that, that is stunning to me as a person who does not have a memory for names and details. I've got the conceptual and the feeling down, but the rest of it, I'm like, not so much.
Well, the part that's so funny is, with the obliteration of my memory and part of my brain.
Yeah.
Really, what you're hearing me recite is about 1/3 of what I used to know.
Oh, so you never got a lot of that back?
No.
Wow.
There's huge chunks that I have no idea what's going on in those time frames at all.
What a trip.
And I still have terrible memory problems to this day, like really problematic. There's certain things I can remember, and other things I have a terrible time with, to where it's actually almost a disability. But
yeah. Well, no offense, but I feel like that would be even worse for you as someone who obviously has such a good memory in every other way. You have to be more aware of it than,
Yeah, it's horrible. Yep. There's nothing they can do about it either. It's like, nope, you're screwed, dude. Like, okay, well, I'll just move on from there and survive this one also. And then on top of it, about 9 years ago, I had a heart attack, and then that jacked me up pretty bad. And then 1 year, my birthday was in September 24th. The year before that, in 2017, I caught some virus bacteria, and it grew and filled my lungs up. I thought I was having an asthma attack. And after 2 days of trying to stop it, I said, something's just really wrong. Not only do my chest hurt, but it feels like it's watered down, and my heart really hurts. And so I called the ambulance, because no one could come and give me a ride, of course. And they took me in, and they got me into the ER. And the doctor comes in, he's like, yeah, you need to be admitted right away. Your lungs are full, and you've just had congestive heart failure.
Jesus.
So I was wheeled upstairs, and they're like, you're going to be here for a while. You're not ICU, but in about a couple hours, you would have been dead, because 45% of my heart was damaged. And on top of having whatever it was in my lungs, I also got Merck there.
Jesus.
So, yeah.
So
I was laying in a bed, basically drowning in my own body. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't barely move. I didn't walk out of the room until after 10 days. And then it was like a little baby walking down a hallway. The geriatrics people there for bone problems were walking faster than me down a hallway. Like, hurry up, pussy, you know. And I lost a bunch.
I think people underestimate the work that your torso does, and especially if your lungs and your heart. I can't imagine your whole body is affected by that. And yeah, like,
well, you can't get oxygen to your organs or your muscles or anything.
You're just all around weak.
And so they were like, we don't even know what's in your lungs. We've done a bronchial scrub. No one in the United States can tell us what it is in there. That's great. By the way, you're quarantined now, Alan. So the sheets went up, the signs went on the door. Everybody had to be gowned up that came in. I wasn't allowed to leave. It sucked.
Yeah. And, so did they figure out what it was?
No,
just unique.
They told me when they told me I could leave, they said, we can never tell you what it was, but you also had Merck and you had heart failure. And then the next day after I first went in there, which was the 10th, because I got out 2 weeks afterwards on my birthday. I got out.
Happy birthday.
And at that time, I was separated from my then wife. We'd ended up separating, and I got divorced. She didn't even come to pick me up. One of my martial arts students had to come to get me.
Wow.
Great moral support, folks.
Yeah.
And so not only was I physically screwed, but then like emotionally kicked in the nuts also on top of it. And ironically, again, like I was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, the wonderful flashbacks. And
so then that brings me to, I have a couple questions that I want to round things off with, because we are going to wind down, but maybe I'll wait. Or if you have more to finish off that story with?
Oh, well, I got out of there and was out for about a week and a half, and then relapsed and went back in for another 3 days.
Same condition?
Just my body almost shut down again because it was just too much stress on it trying to recover. And my hands were swollen like balloons. My feet were swollen. I couldn't barely wash myself, walk to the bathroom. I just basically laid on my couch and like ordered takein. And students came over, and a friend, and kind of cleaned up and helped me. But other than that, I pretty much recovered myself with no help, with my aforementioned knowledge. And on the 24th this year, I posted a picture of what my body looks like now, and kind of a little story of what I went through, and said, I'm really glad to be here because this is where I'm at 1 year later. Oh, and
I remember, because this is around when I met you, right? Because we did like a meditation, I think, for you or something.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Right. And when I was also in a hospital, I had hemiopsis. So I was coughing up blood continually because my lungs were bleeding. So I actually posted a picture of that too, because they had to fill every day. It was 2 bedpans of blood and mucus because I was coughing up so much. They were like, every 10 minutes, someone was in there like, you all right, Alan? Because we're worried you're going to like shuffle off. And I joked to the one woman, I said, they ought to bring in the camera crew from The Walking Dead and just film me. They don't have to do any special effects. They can just watch me like going around and coughing up blood and rotting away and everything. And they're like, I'm glad you can laugh about it because it's not funny over here. What else am I going to do? And so I've had, beyond all those cockamamie experiences, I've had multiple other things I've witnessed and seen. And then one of my good friends, Chris Boris, we became ghost hunters for a while. We produced videos. We were one of the top ranked ghost hunting shows on all of YouTube for years. And we were on Coast to Coast. We did many investigations. I did multiple house cleansings and purgings and stuff like that. We've got multiple DVDs out, and the last one was at St. Augustine, Florida, the lighthouse and the old jail down there. God, I hate flying. And then other than that, I don't know where to go from there on it. Published 1, 2, 4 books now publicly and 3 privately.
And you mentioned that you had some that you might publish soon, so
I've
add
actually
that to the
got
list.
over 30 books on various hard drives that I'm working on simultaneously.
You're like me. I mean, I don't have 30, but I have
just
like
keep pouring. It just keep pouring forth.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot I'm working on, and I was just on Facebook with a friend of mine that I just met from Germany, and we're going to co-write a book about various comparing our different cultures in our countries. So that's why I was a little late in responding to. I apologize for that.
Oh, you're fine.
And so, I'm just, one of my friends, Eric, is a translator in Dharamsala, right down the road from the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
And monks from the monastery there Facebook me all the time to chat. So, a funny story. Back in it would be the 90s, when I was heavily into a cult, a friend of mine, that him and I were kind of the occult leaders in the area. We'll just leave it at that. We produced a magazine, and it was an occult magazine, kind of lambasting the church at the same time. And it went pretty worldwide, and I got responses from the 2 that just really stick out of my mind. Was one letter from Helsinki, Sweden, and another one from a maximum security prison in Texas.
Wow.
Okay, we never mailed the magazine there. How the hell did you get that? And how do you think I'm going to mail more copies and get through security to your cell?
Security.
Right. I mean, he sent the money in the letter. Give me more issues. We like it.
Wow.
Okay. I'm glad my writings are being shared on a cell block.
Yeah.
So,
you can't stop. Once you put it out there, you cannot stop the flow.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Lady O Society in England, London?
Nope.
It's a very posh BDSM subculture group of like rich aristocrats. Her and I talk back and forth all the time and exchange advertisements in our magazine. So it's interesting who I've actually been able to meet on the path and joke about and just exchange signatures and handshakes and whatever. And it's been an interesting ride so far. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I played in a band also up in Cleveland and Akron, and we had a CD out and made songs and played various 80s hits, and got to do that for a while. Produced a DVD on Tai Chi and just a large extent of stuff. And so I guess we'll leave it at that, and you can ask whatever questions. Enough of my bloviating.
Well, you have been a fantastic person to interview, because I had a whole heap of questions to ask you to like guide you through your life, and you just like took me through on your own. So you're a great narrative weaver and an excellent interviewee, aside from the fact that your life is just incredibly epic, like full of experiences and accomplishments, where I feel like I could probably interview you like 10 more times and still like never get bored and never have the same information twice probably. But what I want to kind of close off with is, I'm wondering, like, especially with a life like yours, where you faced so much very intense darkness and negativity or evil or whatever you want to call that. And then at the same time, you've experienced these very profound insights into sort of the mystery of being. Like, do you feel like your path has been one of karma, and that there was something, that you kind of deserved the negative things, or however you want to think about that? Or do you think that it's kind of like random chance and that's just how life went and you made what you did of it? Or do you think that it's more like you are almost like initiated onto paths of mystery by these really dark occurrences, or something else? What's your take on that?
most people in the US, when they use the term karma, it's unfortunately out of a proper context, which is Indian thought and philosophy. It's a Sanskrit term. It means action.
Right.
So many times people use it out of context, and I personally,
that's a good point. And I don't know that my understanding is very very sound at all, but I'm kind of like, from these Gnostic lectures I've been listening to, thinking of it, I think, in the way that they're presenting it, which is like that there just is a cause to every effect that you're experiencing. And so whether or not that cause is immediate and it's recent, or if it's like a previous lifetime, there is something there that has caused that to happen to your soul. Does that like it?
In the context of the Buddha Dharma, which is just the law of the awakened one, enlightenment is an actually incorrect term, because when he was asked by someone this process of questions, wanting to know, well, what is he? Because the person saw his footprint and it had specific markings or signs that denote a important being. The Buddha finally said, I'm just awake, and that's it. So it's not this, the cloud, you're the savior. Like, it's like, no, I still eat and crap and urinate. It's not some special occasion. I'm still as disgusting as any other being. But when we talk about karma, especially in the Buddhist sense, the Buddha's right-hand man, Ananda, one day announced to the Buddha, he said, it's so clear now, I totally get it. The workings of karma makes complete sense to me now. I totally get why everything happens. And the Buddha immediately chastised him for even saying that. He said, don't say such a ridiculous thing. The inner workings of karma are so deep, extending, and complex, like a ball of yarn you try to unwind, that even someone with my perceptual ability, I can't really even figure it out. So for you to say that, you're beyond deluded, and you need to stop saying that. So if the Buddha says, I'm not even going to worry about it, I'm sure as hell not going to worry about it. Because when it comes down to the philosophy of, well, does karma make everything happen? In a certain instance, it does, as to action creates reaction. But we also have to fall back upon this sutra, which just means a threaded teaching of the Buddha's oral presentations, of one called the Sectarians, which speaks of three philosophies that in our ideology just don't create proper context of happiness for people. One is that there is just, everything's a free-for-all, so anybody can do what they want to be, a murderer, a thief, a rapist. There's no context for it. That's very nihilistic, and you should never believe in that, because life is hopeless, and it's the worst belief system you can ever come to.
Yeah.
Second one is that a deity is responsible for everything. If that's true, then if you're a rapist, murderer, thief, it's the God's fault.
Yeah.
Okay, bad philosophy to believe in. You're at someone else's mercy all the time, and we know that's not true. You can choose to do whatever you want. And number three, that karma is everything. Well, if you logically take that to its context, that means everything has to progressively go backwards, so there wouldn't be a first action. So everything can't be the result of karma, because you can choose to do what you want and can think of two choices. If everything was karma, you'd never have a choice to make. You just mindlessly do it. And unfortunately, in the context of Tibetan Buddhism, they've adopted this idea that it's all karma. You deserve everything you get. And that turns into a very masochistic idea of yourself, to where you deserve all the punishments that happen to you. That's not really smart or constructive to believe that, because that makes you nothing but a self-created martyr. And that really does nobody good, because you don't set up boundaries. So it's psychologically not productive to do that. And in the context of Buddhism, you're not going to stop suffering in your life. So don't adopt that mindset also.
Wow. That was a very, very specific and excellently worded answer, and I appreciate the nuance. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I would love to talk to you another time on another episode and go more into depth on any one of the thousands of things that you are an expert on. So if if you'd like to come back, I would love to have you in the future.
Sure. You can watch over the video, and if something I mentioned or talked about you want to like hammer on specifically, and if I have like any more I can talk about, I will,
Yeah.
or I'll say, no, what I said was my load and we need to move on.
Right.
We can choose something else, or if there's some other topic you want to focus on, I can say if I know something about it, like a paranormal topic or whatever.
Yeah, I'd love to get more into some of your experiences with ghost hunting and stuff too. In fact, maybe we can make that an episode of Rogue Ways with
Yeah.
Jay Ritchie, because he's also done some ghost hunting, and that'd be kind of cool to get you guys together on that.
Oh, very cool. Oh, yeah, that would be perfect. Oh,
That
I'd
would be
love
fun.
that. Where does he live?
Jay is down in Florida, and
Okay.
Jay, he does a full throttle wrestling, and then I don't think he does ghost hunting anymore, but I know he has in the past, and it's one of his favorite topics. And just one more thing before I kind of wrap up the show, where can people go to get more of Alan Cicco?
Well, you can go to redlotustemple.net, and that's my temple's webpage. Temple, it's really just a small group of us in my apartment. It's not some grandiose monastery. And you can also go to on Facebook, you have my persona of Alan Cicco, but there's also a Red Lotus Temple Facebook that you can get quotes and teachings and links and stuff on. You can also go to on YouTube to Mahadharma Pala, which is Mahadharmapala, and that's my YouTube channel. You can look on. I'm sorry. Let me pull the document up real quick. My apologies.
Oh, you're fine.
It's a podcast that I do that. Well, I'll get it to you another time. That's more of a chaotic, randomly going off on random topics that I'm talking about. The first one was talking about the whole idea of what is the context of racism in current times, and what are the real roots of it, and what is the real truth of the more agendized version of it, and where does that come from? And so that's kind of an over an hour-long podcast that I'm sure would anger a lot of people.
Yeah. Push all the right buttons.
Right. It's actual material, references, and facts, not what I feel. It's very logical and what's the word? Ontological, like breaking down the systematic of it. That's kind of what it's about, like a historic ontology, I guess you'd call it. So,
oh, that sounds excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked you and that you told all the people, because I want people to be able to find more of you if they would like it. But I also, you have never shared that I know of in any of the groups that we're in together or anything. So I'm glad that I know that now. So I'm going to go to redlotustemple.net.
Yeah.
.net and the Red Lotus Temple Facebook page and check it out myself. So thank you for that.
If you go onto YouTube and you actually search my name, you'll be able to see my one video I did in July, where I did a 1.5 hour long seminar about the historical context of the corpse in U.S. history from Civil War to current times.
I think you mentioned this another time we talked, and I'm fascinated by that. That's really cool.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. And I just want to quote the famous Buddhist teacher, Isa, when he said, where you have humans, you have Buddhas and flies.
That's excellent. Thank you. We always got to temper ourselves, right? That's the whole point. Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Alan, it has been my honor to spend some time gaining some insight and wisdom from you. And I am so grateful that you would share of yourself with us tonight. So thank you.
Yeah.
And friends at home.
Sorry for the horror story.
Oh no, I mean, that's life. I'm smiling right now only because, you know, I'm a happy person overall, and I'm glad that we've both come to a good spot in our lives, but we can't if we ignore the darkness, then we're never gonna get anywhere, you know, that's not real. Yeah. So thank you again. And friends at home and everywhere, this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to Alan Cicco, our guest, and me, your host, Lindsay Sharman. Thank you for tuning in for our first ever one-on-one interview on Rogue Ways. I hope to bring you many more slices of life from a variety of characters along the way from here to there. And until then, as always, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.